So you might remember the 396 SS El Camino here from one of our earlier videos. I think we used it in car washing. And like I explained then, this is our parts car. This is the one that runs around town. It's not necessarily a part of the collection. It is in the collection, but it's more of our workhorse. So it doesn't get as much love, spends some nights outside and sees a little bit more abuse. Well, recently it also became the favorite nesting spot for some cats, apparently, because we've got cat paw prints and scratches all over. I've clayed, I've washed, I've tried some very mild polishes on this, and it hasn't quite come out. So I'm kind of in the stage of experimenting to figure out what's going to be the best step. I'm using a flashlight. Any intense flashlight's going to work. And I'm inspecting all these different panels, and I'm just seeing damage that's just, even for polishing it already, I can still see the deeper damage. So this is where we're going to get into a little bit more aggressive approach with a microfiber cutting disc and our cutting polish and finishing polish to see where I can get with that. I'm also going to try maybe the more aggressive cyan blue foam. That's a pretty aggressive foam too. So we're going to tape off a few spots here, and you can kind of join me as I try and test my way through and figure out what's going to get this paint back to better than average. Again, it is a parts truck and it's not going to be perfect, but when you're the guys from Surf City Garage and you show up somewhere, they kind of expect your paint to look almost perfect. So we're going to tape off a grid and we'll get started. Mark off a few areas on your car and use a few different approaches. The golden rule of detailing is always to start with the least aggressive method first. So I've done that. I've started with our Rapid All-in-One, and it made it better, but it didn't correct all the deeper things. So by working in these little test sections and trying different methods before I go around and do the whole car, I'm going to get a better idea in a small section, figure out exactly what it's going to take, and then once I know, then I can run around and hit everything and should get the same result. So having already tried a more aggressive approach, or a less aggressive approach, I'm going to jump right into our microfiber cutting disc. Now this is a very low profile microfiber disc. That's great because it translates as much of the mechanical energy from the machine to the pad face. I'm going to be using a large throw machine. This is the 21 millimeter Rupes polisher, which is real popular. Same method would apply if you're using a Flex 3401 or even something like a Porter cable. So I've got my pad seated on there, and again, that thin foam membrane translates as much of this machine's movement into the paint as possible. Taller pads with thick foam backing should kind of a shock absorber effect. It loses some of that in translation. So I'm going to try that up here where things are really bad with our machine cut polish. Now, machine cut is a diminishing abrasive polish, but it's a pretty substantial size abrasive when it starts. So even though it does cut pretty well, it finishes down relatively clean, doesn't leave a lot of remnants of the buffing process behind. Now with a microfiber pad, you are going to end up using a little bit more polish than you would with foam, mainly because you need to saturate all the fibers, and they do kind of hold a lot of it. So just like I do with the foam pads, I'll spread it around with my fingers just to make sure the full pad face is treated. I don't want spots with a ton of polish and then other spots with none, because I'm not going to get a very consistent polishing profile that way. Now, if you're not sure what you need, foam or microfiber, it's really hard to say without trying it first, but in most cases, microfiber is going to cut a little bit faster, get those defects a little bit faster than it's a comparable foam pad. The drawback typically is that it doesn't finish quite as well. So when making a decision for your own personal vehicle, know going in that if you choose microfiber, you might get the bigger scratches out faster, but you're still probably going to have to go back over it with foam to remove those little defects. So without any further ado, I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to bump my machine up to speed setting 6. Just like with a foam pad, I'm going to work back and forth. All I need is the weight of the machine plus the weight of my hand and maybe a little bit extra to keep it flat. I'm going to work it until the polish flashes off, remove, and we'll inspect and see if maybe we should try something else in one of the other sections. You can see that's a pretty substantial improvement. I can even see through the polish. And yeah, I mean, this is probably going to be the method we'll use, but it's always good to take off your polishes, inspect under intense light. Wow, that is a pretty substantial improvement. But yeah, like I suspected, I can still see kind of the remnants. The paint's a little hazy after the microfiber. Not in a bad way, just you can tell it's been buffed and it's going to need something to go over it. So I know where that's going to get me. So I know that's going to cut through the heavier defects. I'm going to take a step backwards. I'm going to try a more aggressive foam pad down here and see if maybe that's the happy medium. Maybe that will cut me through the defects without leaving as much remnants behind for me to do a second step. So Remove our microfiber pad. We're going to use the cyan blue foam pad. And again, this is our most aggressive foam pad, but it should finish a little more cleanly than the microfiber. Just like with the microfiber pad, I get a good amount of machine cut on there. I'm going to take my fingers, spread it over the surface, make sure I get it more evenly spread. Now these are pre-polymer or non-reticulated foams. So they work great with the water-based polishes, which all of our polishes are water-based and body shop safe. It also prevents it from absorbing deep into the pad. So it's not going to suck its way into here. It's going to stay on the surface of the pad, allowing me to get the most out of the polish that I put into it. Some types of pads, open cell foams in particular, the polishes that you put on can actually absorb through, and you pull it off, you'll actually see them showing through on the Velcro backing. This foam is designed not to let that happen. So it maximizes the polish that you've got on the surface. We're all primed up. Should also mention all of these polishes, in addition to being body shop safe, are silicone free, so no concerns there either. Notice I'm starting and stopping on the car, just so you don't fling polish everywhere or send your polishing pad flying. We're going to go ahead and knock this one off and see if this is any better than the microfiber. Well, looking at both side by side, and we'll bring the camera in so you guys can see this too, it's clear the microfiber might be the way to go. The foam definitely did a very nice job, but I do see a few deeper scratches that run through that it wasn't quite capable of getting. So it's just a bit too far gone for foam at this point. So we've kind of defined our process now. We now know that we need to use microfiber, probably followed by a foam to finish up to just kind of clean up some of the after effects. But we're going to go and clean our microfiber pad, and we'll do a larger test section using our complete process, and then look at it and we'll decide, is that the way we want to go? So now that we've decided the microfiber is definitely the pad to go with for the cutting polish just to get maximum results, we realize that with either pad we're going to have to go back over it with something finer, the finishing polish, and really refine it. So as you can see, this car has a tinted clear on it, and we're pulling up a little bit of it. It's not a single stage, but it is a tinted clear, so I'm getting a little bit of black transfer from that. Because of that, I'm going to do, some guys will use brushes, some guys will use the side of a screwdriver to do this. There's another method you can use. You already have towels out. Take your towel, bump your speed down all the way to its lowest setting. See all that residue I've pulled up out of that pad? All of that's the spent polish and a little bit of the pigment from the car. That's now out of the pad. Pad's nice and fluffy again. The fibers are standing up and ready to go. Nothing wrong with using a brush if you prefer a pad brush, but this is definitely a easier way because you're already going to have a towel on your cart while you're working. So we're going to use this last tech session down here, and we're going to use this to kind of go through what we think is going to be the final process. I'm going to, since the pad already has some polish in it, I'm not going to add nearly as much this time. 4 drops on there. I'm going to spread them around a little bit just to make sure we don't have any large globs. And this process is going to look the same whether you do have a lacquer, single stage paint job, a clear coat, base coat job, modern paint, old paint. Process is the similar. Paint is paint for the most part. You will get pigment transfer with tinted clears or single stage paints like these, where you'll actually see a little bit of color coming off the pad. Perfectly normal, nothing to be alarmed about. You won't see a color transfer with a newer car that has a clear coat because obviously the polishing surface is clear. So we're going to move down to this last section here. You know, these two were close and close, but we're going to go ahead and finally define what the exact process this car is going to need to get to perfect. I'm going to bump my speed back up to 6 and work this area with the microfiber first. Now we're going to remove the residue just so we can inspect our work to this point. Because this is a test panel, I want to see what each process is doing. Once you decide what step or 2 steps is going to work for your car in particular, after the machine cut polish, you can actually go directly over the residue. No need to remove it because it is a diminishing abrasive. If you choose to remove it and inspect it, that's fine, but you can save yourself that step after you've figured out exactly what it's going to take. So, yep, results there looked very similar to what we got up there. So I'm going to step down to our crimson pad. This is our ultra fine pad. So this is the least abrasive of our foams. This will be perfect for using the machine finish polish to refine that down to a really, really glossy shine. So just like with any other foam pad, give my polish a shake. I'm going to put a small bead on there, and I'm going to spread it around. Now, machine finish polish is actually a blend of 2 separate types of abrasives. This gives it really great work time, nice long work time, so you can refine the finish down really well, but also it's very, very fine finishing, so it will leave the paint defect free. This one, I'm gonna go and keep working on speed 6, cord over the shoulder. All right, so now we're ready for the final inspection here. And that definitely looks like the winning combo. Now you might find that your car in particular maybe takes the medium cutting tangerine colored pad. It might take a combination of the blue and the red. Every car is going to be a little bit different. Depends on how bad the defects are, what type of paint you're dealing with. Some paints are harder or softer than others. Corvettes, for example, are notorious for having very, very hard clear coat. So that would be an example where a microfiber pad and the process we used here would probably be the way to go. But for this car in particular, after doing our test panels, I can pull this tape back and clearly see, without even seeing the side-by-side, that took out all those little cat paw print marks and a little bit of water etching that was there, and it is, for a car of its age and its use, gonna look great. So now we know we can use the microfiber cutting pad along with the machine cut polish as step 1 to level all those really heavy defects. Come back over it with the crimson red foam pad and the machine finish polish, and we get a absolutely mirror-like shine, even out of a paint job as beat up as this one. So next time this thing pulls up at a parts store, it'll be recognized as, hey, it's the Surf City guys, look at their parts truck, that thing's perfect.